one of the programme's most popular features has been its theme music, the evocative strains of The Chain, written and played by these world-famous people, Fleetwood Mac. Now, this is the first time in 10 years that Fleetwood Mac have been back to the UK, so it's my pleasure to thank them on behalf of Grand Prix fans everywhere for all the enjoyment they've given us and for some wonderful music. Everybody's travelling. Fleetwood Mac are off on the European leg of their world tour, and the Grand Prix teams are here in Mexico for round 4 of the championship and the first of a 3-race series on the other side of the Atlantic. The most important thing about Mexico is that the circuit is 7,000 feet above sea level, which gives the turbo cars an even bigger power advantage. The circuit's bumpy, it's hot, and it's going to be a very gruelling race. With 2 wins and a second from 3 races, Alain Prost's already looking good for a 3rd World Championship in a McLaren that's the class of the field. But with Berger second and Ferrari a lot more competitive here, Senna is desperate for points to improve on his 3rd place ahead of Piquet's Lotus, Alboretto's Ferrari and Derek Warwick's Arrows. In the Constructors' Championship, McLaren, with Prost and Senna and a 13-point lead over Ferrari, look unbeatable. Amazingly, Frenchman Philippe Alliot will be driving in the Mexican Grand Prix in spite of this horrific accident when, in yesterday's practice, he lost his Lola Ford on the notorious 160 miles an hour pits turn. Incredibly, Philippe, only just recovered from a similar crash at Monaco, was unhurt. And to an inquiring Nigel Mansell, who went off in exactly the same place last year, it was thumbs up from Philippe. There, in pole position, the imperturbable, we thought, Ayrton Senna, until Monaco 2 weeks ago, when he amazed everybody by making a mistake in the closing stages of the race with a very secure lead and completely blew it. That is Alain Prost, the world champion of 1985 and 1986, second on the grid, leading the championship this year. 3rd is Gerhard Berger, but much closer in terms of time to the McLarens than he has been in the past. There is Nelson Piquet, 4th position on the grid, much better than he was at Monaco.
Che vedete riguardano un filmato che presenta le bellezze turistiche, culturali, archeologiche e gastronomiche della capitale messicana, dove sta per prendere il via la 4ª prova del campionato del mondo di Formula 1, Gran Premio del Messico. Tra poco vedremo le immagini dello spettacolare incidente nel quale è rimasto coinvolto, fortunatamente senza danni alla persona, ieri Filippo Alliot alla conclusione delle prove di qualificazione. Ve lo dico perché andranno in onda subito dopo questa serie di immagini che, come vi dicevo, vi propongono squarci di vita messicana. Veniamo subito alle prove di warm-up che si sono svolte poco fa. I più veloci sono stati ancora una volta i 2 piloti della McLaren Honda che sono schierati in prima fila, e ancora Senna è stato più veloce di Prost. I tempi sono indicativi per dimostrare che i piloti della McLaren si sono impegnati molto, perché hanno girato con tempi di assoluto rilievo: 1:20.121 per Senna, 1:20.416 per Prost. Berger col terzo tempo, confermando quindi la sua posizione dello schieramento di partenza, ha girato in 1:21,369. Si ripete l'immagine, le posizioni dello schieramento della griglia anche per i due posti successivi. Al quarto posto c'è Nelson Piquet, che nello schieramento è in seconda fila, e quinto Michele Alboreto con la seconda Ferrari, entrambi sul tempo di 1:22, 228 per Piquet, 685 per Alboreto. Il sesto tempo, primo degli aspirati, per il warm-up di stamani è toccato a Botzen, mentre il più veloce degli aspirati nello schieramento di partenza è il nostro Nannini. Vediamolo questo schieramento di partenza. Prima fila per Senna e Prost, seconda per Berger e Piquet, terza per Alboreto e Nakajima, quarta per Civer e Nannini. Ma io darei subito la linea a Ezio Zermiani, che ci informerà di varie situazioni e anche del tempo atmosferico che pare mettersi al brutto.
Infatti si sta un po' oscurando, ma io volevo innanzitutto, lo vedremo probabilmente dopo, l'incidente pauroso subito da Di Baglio, senza nessuna conseguenza, perché lo vediamo qui sulla macchina, anzi aveva il desiderio di salutare proprio i fans italiani. Come va?
Mio va molto molto bene, non problemi.
Ti ricordi ancora di quel brutto volo? Sì.
Che?
Ti ricordi ancora del volo?
No, ricordo niente, e passa niente ieri,
Non è successo proprio niente ieri. Grazie,
No, grazie.
È veramente spiritoso, diciamo che ha subito solo una piccola contusione al ginocchio sinistro, per il resto nessun danno neanche ai nervi, praticamente quindi nessuna conseguenza di un volo che i telespettatori avranno visto effettivamente pauroso. Nuova la linea a Mario per sentire le altre notizie.
Vi ricordo dunque che questo Gran Premio del Messico, quarta prova delle 16 previste per il campionato del mondo di Formula 1, ha come motivo tecnico il fatto di svolgersi a quota superiore ai 2000 metri di altitudine, quindi in condizioni che favoriscono ovviamente i motori sovralimentati nei confronti dei motori alimentati a pressione atmosferica. Quindi se già un certo favore si era dimostrato nel corso della stagione, e siamo finalmente con le immagini in diretta dal circuito sullo schieramento di partenza sulla zona del traguardo e dei box, dicevo, se già nelle corse precedenti di questo campionato si era visto che comunque, ed ecco inquadrato Filippo Agliò, le vetture sovralimentate andavano un po' di più mediamente delle vetture alimentate a pressione atmosferica, qui la differenza dovrebbe essere ancora più evidente, tenuto presente comunque che con il suo ottavo tempo Nannini ieri è stato molto brillante. Ecco, attenzione, la seconda vettura è quella di Agliò, che sta per andare sul cordolo e poi partire verso la sinistra del teleschermo. Osservate adesso la vettura andrà verso il terrapieno esterno e si ribalterà definitivamente ancora una volta. Tutti naturalmente hanno temuto il peggio, avete già sentito parlare Agliò, che è uscito poi da solo dalla vettura. Non so se le immagini ve lo faranno vedere, ma il pilota tra poco toglierà il volante e si sfilerà dalla vettura, che è riuscita a essere in condizioni tali da poter essere rimessa in efficienza. Il concorrente naturalmente partirà e farà qualche giro solamente, ma comunque una cosa incredibile. Linea Zermiani.
Ecco, volevo proprio aggiungere come particolare che i meccanici hanno lavorato moltissimo, l'hanno ripristinata, è abbastanza miracoloso questo tipo di intervento, e c'è una fessurazione sul serbatoio nella parte alta, non potevano sostituirlo perché non l'avevano, di conseguenza non potendo fare il pieno ovviamente non sarebbe in grado di concludere tutti i giri previsti. In ogni caso è ovvio che ci sia anche questa presenza della macchina, perché, parliamoci chiaro, avevamo parlato con la Russ, è ovvio che schierandosi e partendo riesce ovviamente a venire in possesso della quota prevista per la partecipazione al Gran Premio. Oltretutto diciamo che c'è anche un discorso di sponsor, chiaramente i messicani faranno vedere più e più volte questa macchina, soprattutto nella prima parte, per far capire in effetti con che tipo di intervento miracoloso sono stati capaci di rimetterla in pista.
Vicino a noi, per farci compagnia e per fare un commento tecnico alla corsa, abbiamo Nicola Larini, pilota della Osella, che non si è potuto qualificare per una serie di vicissitudini sfortunate, ha potuto provare poco e pur disponendo di una vettura a turbo non è riuscito a qualificarsi e qui a farci compagnia insieme a Gianfranco Palazzoli e come al solito vedete lo schieramento di partenza è completato, i meccanici sono ancora in pista, 26 come sempre i partenti, dei 31 iscritti al campionato del mondo come sapete nelle prove del venerdì. Ecco, intanto vedete la griglia di partenza con Senna e Prost in prima fila, Berger e Piquet in seconda, Alboreto e Nakajima in terzo. Vi stavo dicendo nelle pre-qualifiche della mattina di venerdì era stato escluso Stefano Modena con l'Eurobrun per una misurazione pari irregolare dell'alettone posteriore un po' troppo alto, e nelle successive prove erano stati esclusi Palmer, Larini, Bailey e Campos dei 30 che erano ammessi alle prove definitive per lo schieramento di partenza di questo Gran Premio del Messico. Vi dicevo, mentre avevamo avuto a Rio de Janeiro curve molto lunghe e caldo, avevamo avuto a Imola saliscendi con impegno per i freni e grande consumo di carburante, abbiamo avuto il saliscendi tortuoso cittadino di Monte Carlo, qui abbiamo la prova sul circuito ad alta quota, cioè oltre i 2000 metri. Di più qualche cosa è cambiato rispetto allo scorso anno, nel senso che è stato rifatto l'asfalto dei rettilinei e le vetture possono andare leggermente più veloci, così ha confermato anche Ayrton Senna. Intanto vedete inquadrata la macchina di Nelson Piquet, campione del mondo in carica, schierato in seconda fila a fianco di Berger, e do la linea ancora a Germiani e Bottas.
Ecco, per aggiungere su quello che tu dicevi, che il circuito è stato rinnovato, in alcune parti con asfalto nuovo, però la zona è paludosa, qui sotto si chiama palude, per cui chiede in qualche parte. Lo vedrete anche dalle immagini, saltano molto nell'avantreno le macchine, e questo ha creato per esempio un problema enorme in tutti questi giorni per le Williams di Patrese e Nigel Mansell, i quali hanno un comando elettronico con i vari sensori per quanto riguarda le cosiddette sospensioni intelligenti. Le sospensioni attive non funzionano proprio perché è troppo repentino il movimento di questi avvallamenti dell'asfalto, che evidentemente non sono riusciti a creare una zona diciamo molto piana e priva di gomme.
Vi ricordo che nel campionato del mondo piloti la situazione di classifica vede Alain Prost al comando con 2 vittorie, San Marino e Brasile, e 24 punti. Secondo è Gerhard Berger con 14 punti, mentre quello che viene considerato in questo momento il pilota nettamente più veloce e avversario principe dell'inquadrato poco fa Prost, Ayrton Senna è solo terzo con i 9 punti conquistati con la vittoria. Monaco, linea del Monaco.
Aggiungo ancora per quanto riguarda le McLaren, sono perfette, l'ambiente era sereno dal punto di vista tecnico, rendendo la situazione sotto controllo, però vi assicuro che i due hanno già cominciato a non parlarsi, voglio dire Senna e Prost. Addirittura Prost ha ritardato molto la preparazione dopo il warm-up di questa mattina e ha fatto capire chiaramente, ce l'ha detto, che io sono tutto un po' di preparare la macchina per l'altro, a questo punto cerco di prepararla per conto mio. È una diatriba che si tira avanti, dove sapete sempre quando il team c'è diciamo la presenza di due emergenti, soprattutto vincenti come loro. È successo, lo ricorderete, tra Piquet e Mansell, e fu una delle cause della fuga di Piquet dalla Williams alla Lotus. Devo aggiungere in coda un discorso anche per quanto riguarda la Ferrari. I due ferraristi hanno scelto una cosa abbastanza strana, 2 assetti diversi. Berger ha chiesto più carico sull'alettone posteriore, carico aerodinamico, e Alboreto più alleggerito questo carico. Sappiamo che di solito Berger preferisce alleggerire la macchina proprio perché cerca una velocità maggiore, come sapete, e di conseguenza forse a volte rischia di più, ma ha una maggiore velocità della linea.
Benissimo, e la linea adesso la passo a Gianfranco Palazzoli, che si è fatto dare da Michele Alboreto le velocità di questo tracciato, uno dei tanti possibili su questo circuito della città sportiva Maddalena Mixhuca, intitolato ai fratelli Pedro e Ricardo Rodriguez, campioni messicani degli anni 60-70. Riccardo morì provando il circuito per il Gran Premio di Città di Messico del 62 con la Lotus. Pedro corse parecchi anni vincendo 2 Gran Premi e stando parecchi anni anche alla Ferrari.
Giro di ricognizione partito, siamo sul rettilineo più lungo di questa pista che ha un senso orario. Qui in gara i piloti, chiaramente i piloti con motore turbo, arrivano addirittura a velocità di 310-314 orari in sesta. Quasi tutte le macchine oramai montano cambi a 6 marce. Arriveremo alla fine di questo rettilineo, le macchine stanno zizzagando per scaldare gomme e sospensioni. Arriveremo alla fine di questo rettilineo e i piloti innestano qui la terza marcia a una velocità di circa 140 all'ora. Percorrono questo tipo di S che potete ben vedere, sempre con la terza marcia, per poi in uscita infilare la quarta, passare a una velocità in questa curva d'uscita sui 160 all'ora e rinfilare nel rettilineo che segue la quinta per arrivare a una velocità di circa 280 all'ora. Chiaramente vedendo le macchine sfilare così lentamente per il giro di ricognizione non si ha l'impressione visiva della velocità con la quale poi gireranno, ma le velocità sono senz'altro queste. Alla fine di questo abbastanza breve rettilineo che appunto percorrono in quinta, trovano una curva abbastanza secca. Quindi qui quarta, curva abbastanza secca che percorreranno in seconda marcia attorno ai 120 all'ora, per poi rimettere la seconda, e questa è la curva più lenta della pista, una curva da 100 all'ora. Hanno percorso tutta la parte mista, dove Duca Rus mi diceva che la Lotus ha veramente dei tanti problemi, e sono arrivati adesso al curvone velocissimo di quinta, che percorrono attorno ai 260 all'ora, curvone uscendo dal quale ieri Alliot ha avuto quel terribile incidente, salendo sul cordolo che vedete alla vostra sinistra. Siamo a questo punto arrivati sulla griglia di partenza. Quando tutti saranno schierati, il semaforo si accenderà sul rosso e a questo punto ridò la linea a Mario Poltronieri.
Grazie Palazzoli, 26 partenti per questo Gran Premio del Messico, quarta prova del campionato del mondo di Formula 1 1988, 39esima edizione. Attenzione, sulla sinistra in alto al teleschermo inquadrato il semaforo, tra poco si accenderà la luce rossa, poi il verde e vedremo. Intanto c'è un pilota che fa segno con il braccio che ha il motore fermo probabilmente, vediamo se la direzione di corsa, sì, si ferma la procedura. 5 minuti, quindi. Palazzoli, che cosa si fa in questo caso?
Ah sì, c'è un ritardo della procedura di partenza e fra 5 minuti ripetono tutta la procedura di partenza.
Con il giro di ricognizione?
Con il giro, e dovranno chiaramente poi fare un giro in meno.
Si fa un giro in meno?
Si fa un giro in meno, quindi.
Ecco, e il pilota che aveva segnalato il problema è il compagno di squadra di Philippe Alliot, Yannick Dalmas, sulla Lola Larrousse. Citiamo anche il nome Lola, che è la fabbrica della Coca, proprio ricordando le eccellenti qualità dimostrate in quel drammatico, spettacolare incidente che avete visto all'inizio di questa telecronaca, di questa trasmissione, e che probabilmente vi è stata anche già proposta nei nostri precedenti notiziari. I tecnici della Larrousse Calmel, che è la squadra, ecco Gérard Larrousse di spalle in piedi davanti al muso della vettura con la cuffia. Stanno discutendo di qual è il problema, mentre si sono portati anche i tecnici della Marelli che fornisce gli impianti elettrici alla squadra di Larrousse per vedere se poteva trattarsi di un problema di carattere elettrico o elettronico. Ecco, c'è proprio giusto il momento per, direi, far dire subito qualche cosa a Nicola Larini. Come hai trovato questa pista? Conoscevi già Città del Messico? No. Come l'hai trovata?
Direi che è molto impegnativa, soprattutto mette a dura prova il fisico, visto questa pista.
Per esempio per queste continue curve contro curve che ti centrifugano?
Ma direi che ce n'è soltanto una che ha una centrifuga
molto forte,
tremenda, sì, si parla addirittura di 3,6 G.
quindi c'è questa curva, che mette sul rettilineo dove ha avuto l'incidente a Lyon. E per il resto, diciamo, sollecitazioni particolari alla macchina, freni, cambio, eccetera, hai avuto qualche pressione particolare? No?
No, ho visto che il resto della pista è abbastanza scorrevole, ecco, c'è soprattutto il problema del saltellamento, che bisogna viaggiare con le vetture leggermente più alte che del normale, per evitare questi problemi appunto di saltellamenti, però per il resto è abbastanza impegnativa, direi.
Intanto vedete che le coperture termiche sono state messe sui pneumatici di tutte le vetture per mantenerli in temperatura, o perlomeno di buona parte delle vetture. Avevamo visto una Ferrari, poi una Lotus, mentre si continua, ecco, adesso vedete inquadrato Michele Alboreto che parte in terza fila col quinto tempo e che stamattina aveva ottenuto il quinto tempo anche nelle prove di warm-up. La linea a Palazzoli.
Sentivo prima Ezio diceva della diversa taratura, del diverso carico aerodinamico che hanno le due vetture Ferrari, ma è una cosa abbastanza normale, perché stamattina facendo un giro per i box sentivo che la preoccupazione maggiore qui sono le gomme, e le gomme sono veramente al limite. Allora, mettendo più carico aerodinamico, la gomma si consuma meglio e probabilmente dovrebbe riuscire a terminare la gara. Con meno carico aerodinamico la gomma si consuma di più, fa il ricciolo, e quindi è possibile che con meno carico aerodinamico si debbano cambiare le gomme. Allora chiaramente Ferrari cosa ha fatto? Michele Alboreto ha una guida molto pulita, ha caricato poco la macchina di Michele Alboreto, dandogli quindi più velocità sul diritto e sperando che con la sua guida pulita riesca a portare lo stesso in fondo le sue gomme. Berger, che guida in modo più irruente, più sporco, ha maggior carico aerodinamico e quindi dovrebbe terminare la gara con le gomme, con un solo treno.
Intanto vedete inquadrato Gabriele Tarquini con la Coloni, mentre in precedenza dietro a Yannick Dalmazzo avevamo visto la BMS Dallara di Alex Caffi, ed ecco che si tolgono le coperture termiche e si ricomincia la procedura di partenza, mentre intanto vedete che i meccanici della McLaren, che avevano messo su cavalletti mobili le due vetture, le hanno riabbassate a livello del terreno. Alza il braccio e segnale di avviamento Berger. Dilarini.
No, volevo dire che proprio dove è schierato Senna c'è tutto l'olio che ieri ha perso a Lione.
Hope that they manage to keep the engines running this time. Ayrton Senna leads Alain Prost around again, the usual weaving and bobbing and ducking and diving. Philippe Alliot starting at the back of the grid. The Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, the Brothers Rodriguez racetrack, to put it into English, named after Pedro and Ricardo Rodriguez, the famous Mexican Grand Prix drivers of past, both of whom were sadly killed. But the circuit was reinstated in 1986. A lot of complaints about a bumpy surface, and they still obtain, and it accounts for the reason why Nigel Mansell, last year's winner in the reactive suspension this year, Williams, is only in 14th place, and his teammate Riccardo Patrese only 17th. They've had all sorts of problems setting up the cars, and they have not succeeded in doing so to their satisfaction. And this is probably the unique part of the Mexico circuit. This complex of bends which the drivers are going through now, and through which it is very difficult to find the right racing line. So the forecast must obviously be the likelihood of another McLaren victory, qualified by the fact that there is no doubt that Ferrari in particular have succeeded in closing the gap, because where the McLarens for the previous two races, three races, were some 3 seconds ahead of the competition, Prost, for instance, is only about 0.7 of a second faster than Berger. Senna is about the same amount faster, so they're very close indeed. That's Nakajima in 6th position on the grid, coming up to it. After an aborted first start, the Mexico Grand Prix is hopefully now going to get away with Filipe Alliot on the back rank of the grid after having had trouble earlier on. Senna in pole position on the left. Prost in 2nd position on the right. It's going to be a 67-lap race now, reduced from the originally intended 68 laps. It's hot, it's humid, it's a very demanding track, especially that corner in the background. And now it's go again, and we've got him away cleanly this time. Senna leads, and Piquet comes screaming up. Alliot gets away in the background, and Prost goes through and takes the lead. Piquet goes up into 2nd place. Senna goes down to 3rd position, and Piquet is higher up now than he has been this season as he goes into turn 1.
There seemed to be a bit of bumping and boring going on round towards the back of the field then at the start, but I'm going to have to wait for a replay to sort that out. And we think that Sala was involved in that bit, and there were yellow flags copiously. So Prost made a very good start, got the run down to the first corner, and Piquet showing a bit of aggression there, and that's got him into 2nd place.
And Nakajima is ahead of both the Ferraris. He's got ahead of Gerhard Berger, who was 3rd on the grid. He's got ahead of Alboreto, who was 5th on the grid. Prost is already building up a lead. Piquet is 2nd. Senna is in 3rd position. Nakajima is 4th. And then the two Ferraris. And it's an amazing achievement by Satoru Nakajima. This is certainly the highest that he's been in a Grand Prix at this stage of a race. And already Alain Prost has got the hammer well and truly down, and Ayrton Senna goes for 2nd position and takes it from Piquet 3rd, Nakajima 4th, then the two Ferraris, then it's Eddie Cheever and Derek Warwick and the two Benettons.
And Prost will be disappointed now. He's got a chance to look in his mirrors, and he'll see straight away that Ayrton Senna has slipped by Piquet going into the quick one onto the complete the lap, and he might have just been hoping, although he certainly won't have banked on it, to have a few laps respite in which to build up a bit of a cushion to give Senna something to shoot at. But the two McLarens back in the positions to which we've already become accustomed this season, and their dominance may not be quite as great here as it has been. Nakajima having an absolutely storming race, far and away the best of his career. Berger's beginning to try and find a way past behind, but the McLaren dominance, and Berger, look, there goes Berger, ooh, and that looked a little bit rash. I think I would have thought that Berger ought to be patient. Nakajima is not too highly respected, but when he's holding down 4th place in a Grand Prix and you're trying to capture it from him, then he deserves a lot of respect.
And you saw Filipe Alliot go into the pits. The leading Ferrari in 5th place is that of Gerhard Berger, and Alain Prost is showing that he is not to be overlooked. He is a long, long way from being yesterday's man, which some people thought he was in comparison with Senna, notwithstanding the fact that he's leading the World Championship. 2 laps completed. Alain Prost leads. Senna is 2nd. We have yet to see this season a real battle between Prost and Senna on the track. For one reason or another, it has been denied us, but now, for the first time in 1988, we have got 2 of the top men of Grand Prix racing up at the front in the car that is undoubtedly the class of the field. And Alain Prost leads for McLaren. Ayrton Senna is 2nd. Look at the gap before the 3rd place man Piquet comes round. Nakajima is still in 4th place ahead of the 2 Ferraris.
Yes, and we are vaguely hoping that we might have a bit of a race there, apart from any race that we get between the 2 McLarens. And as Murray rightly says, this is the first time that they've really got involved in head-to-head battle of the season. And of course, we've been hoping for it, with Prost being held up for most of the race in Monte Carlo. He never had a chance to chase Senna, and then Senna threw it away anyway. But now Senna has got to chase Prost. But certainly, up here in Mexico City, for the first time this season, the opposition looked to be in vague striking distance, although even the first 3 laps of the race has hurt that theory quite a lot. But we are expecting rain. It's become very overcast and humid here in the last 3/4 of an hour, and we're expecting rain. At least the local forecasters, the local experts tell us, in their words, there will be rain before the end of the race. So whether how accurate or not they are, but certainly that's the expectation, and that of course could liven things up enormously.
Lap 4, and Prost is leading by an amazing 2.7 seconds. His teammate Ayrton Senna. Look back along the track and you'll see the red and white McLaren. 2.7 seconds is the gap. Now you should see a flash of yellow. It's Piquet. Behind Piquet I saw a Ferrari. That means to say that Nakajima has been passed, presumably by Berger. I'll be able to tell you when they come past us. But Gerhard Berger, I think, is up into 4th place as through the complex. Yes, it's Berger. I can see across the course. Berger is in 4th position now. So can he close up on Piquet? Can he pass Piquet? Can he do anything about Senna? Time will tell. Meantime, Prost is in a class of his own at the moment.
Yes, Senna doesn't seem to be catching him at all. If anything, just visually, it looks as if Prost has marginally increased that gap since Senna got past Nelson Piquet at the end of lap 1. So it does look as if we've got a real race on our hands. Now, there was a bit of unexpected tyre trouble in the warm-up this morning, in that Goodyear had brought a tyre that they hoped that all the teams would be able to go through the race without trouble. And with the weight of fuel on board, 1 or 2 people were getting their left front tyres a bit marginal, and the order of the day to most of the drivers is to take it easy in the first 10 or 15 laps. Now, we'll keep an eye on Prost's tyres when we get a close-up. Just what I saw then, his left front looked all right to me. But Prost, of course, is the master. If anybody is going to be messing up their front tyres, Prost and the McLaren chassis, I have to say, are just about the least likely. But you never know. He's under a lot of pressure for speed this year with Senna, and it'll be up to Senna to try and force him to push harder. Remember, Senna has driven very cannily here in the past on tyres, and he may well not be pushing at the moment. It may well be that Senna is just trying to make absolutely certain of looking after that left front. He knows that once he can get to about lap 20, he's got plenty of time in the rest of the race to get down to the serious chase.
Well, Alain Prost is increasing his lead. 3.3 seconds. Lap 5 out of 67. Prost leads. There he is. Senna is in 2nd position. Nelson Piquet is 3rd. Gerhard Berger is up to 4th. Down to 5th has gone Nakajima, ahead of Michele Alboreto, who is 6th. In 7th position, it is Eddie Cheever, and in 8th place, it's Derek Warwick. So, very much a turbo race in these early stages, and no retirements. Things are going well in Mexico, and you can see how bumpy the course is. You can see, too, that Senna is not at the moment carving out, but in the background, you can see that Berger is closing right up on Piquet, and there, Alboreto is ahead of Nakajima, and Berger is really forcing for 3rd position now. Race order, Alain Prost, Senna. This is the battle for 3rd position between the Lotus Honda of world champion Nelson Piquet and the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger, 2nd in the world championship, and Alboreto, who has got a lot to prove between himself and Berger, has got ahead of Nakajima and up into 4th place. The Ferraris are going for it.
Yes, I have to say, I think Alboreto has already proved it between himself and Berger, and that he's not not really in the same class as Berger once he got the experience, and Berger now will probably wait until they go round the very fast right-hander. Oh, Berger's diving inside. That may have cost him the chance to slipstream past on the straight. Well, he's not too far away to pick up the toe, and he should pick it up nicely from there. And that being in the hole in the air made by Piquet's car, unless Piquet has turned up his boost and can use more, but they're running pretty much maximum boost anyway, as fuel is not a problem at this altitude. And Berger, well, Berger is not a match for Piquet, it would appear, on straight line speed, because had he been equally matched for straight line speed, he should really have been able to pull past with the toe, using the hole in the air made by Piquet's car to slingshot up to him, and then the momentum to carry him past. He couldn't do that, so Berger is now going to have to start looking for a way around in the twisty section, and that is not so easy.
And Alboreto in 5th position is catching Berger and Piquet. Look at the gap visually. You can see that the second Ferrari is closing up on his teammate there on the right, Berger, because Berger is undoubtedly being held up by Nelson Piquet, which is giving Alboreto in 5th position the opportunity to close. Race order, lap 7, no change at the front, except that Prost is pulling away from Senna, and it's still Piquet 3rd and Berger 4th. There they are.
Berger having a look. Going back to the Berger-Alboreto situation, certainly my opinion is that there is no contest there, and that Berger's established himself very much as number 1, and I'm very, very sure that we won't see Alboreto in a Ferrari next season. I think that's almost certain, and I was quite surprised that we saw him in one for this season, but you see, still Berger can't get close enough. He's going to have to be heroic. He tried to be, had a look, but he knows it's a long race, and he wasn't going to take any silly risks, but he is going to have to start really working on getting a run up at Piquet. When it's difficult to pass somebody, you need to get the maneuver maybe started 2 or 3 corners before you actually make the maneuver, to get the build-up, so as it were, you arrive in the right place at the right time 3 corners later or more. It can be quite a lengthy process. So, no, it was a surprise to me that Alboreto was kept by Ferrari for this year, and I think it was mainly loyalty, of course, and a lack of really obvious alternatives for the Ferrari team.
And behind these two battling for 3rd position, the news is that Nakajima in 6th place is being rapidly caught by the 2 arrows of Eddie Cheever, who is 7th, and Derek Warwick, who is 8th. And now Berger is pretty close to being in a really challenging position for Piquet, and this is the corner that's caused all the problems. They go round that at some 155 miles an hour, and you've got to have a very, very brave nature.
And Berger certainly took that corner very well. He was a lot quicker coming out of it than Piquet, trying to get a slingshot, but still Piquet's power. But because of doing the corner well, and that was a perfect illustration, thank you, Gerhard, of exactly what I was explaining. He held back that time, didn't try and pass him into the corner, held back, took the full line, and he was going a good 5 miles an hour quicker than Nelson Piquet when they exited the turn, which allowed him at least to stay very, very close to Piquet on the straight. And that was an outstandingly good piece of driving by Berger. He thought it out, worked it out from the 2 previous laps, and theory is one thing, but he executed the practice brilliantly.
Well, now can Gerhard Berger, having got ahead of Nelson Piquet into 3rd place, do anything about Ayrton Senna in front of him? Behind Nelson Piquet, who is 4th, it is still Michele Alboreto. And behind Alboreto, Nakajima, followed by the 2 arrows. In fact, the race order on this, the 10th lap, in this 67 lap, is still Prost. There is the gap between Prost and Senna, and quite clearly, unless Senna is playing a waiting game, which is a dangerous thing to do, as Prost is the fastest on the circuit, 1:21.136, Alain Prost, compared with the lap record held by Nelson Piquet, 1:19.1. So Prost, with a 2.5 bar Honda engine, is only 2 seconds slower than Nelson Piquet's 4-bar record last year, 4 bar being the boost pressure. And amazingly, Ayrton Senna in pole position was faster than Nigel Mansell's pole position last year. And you're looking at race leader Alain Prost, who has already won in Brazil and Monaco and finished second in San Marino to lead the World Championship, leading here in Mexico on lap 10.
Un gruppetto che si sta presentando compatto in fondo al rettilineo più veloce, c'è qualche tentativo di sorpasso, intanto avete visto in particolare inquadrato Mansell, c'è anche la Dallara nel gruppo e sentiamo cosa ci voleva dire Palazzoli.
No, niente, volevo solo osservare che il professor Prost deve essersi veramente seccato in quest'ultima settimana, cioè dopo il Gran Premio di Monte Carlo si era sentito accusare di aver vinto per fortuna. Il professor Prost è sempre un grossissimo pilota e probabilmente ha sistemato la macchina come voleva lui, la sua, l'altro forse non ha fatto in tempo a copiarla e sta dimostrando adesso di essere...
Like that next year, we'll be back to real exciting motor racing. But as they crossed the line on the previous lap, just to go back to that, Senna was leading Berger by some 12 seconds. So we'll keep an eye on that gap to see if Berger is able to stay with or even catch the McLarens. I don't fancy his chances, but let's hope so.
Well, there's Alain Prost, and Senna's far from catching Prost. He's dropping back. The gap has increased to 5 seconds. The leading 3.5-litre non-turbo car is that of Alessandro Nannini in 9th position, ahead of his teammate Boots, and that is Maurizio Gugelmin out of the race. So he's an early retirement on lap 11, and there's Streff, Philippe Streff in the AGS, who started much lower down in Mexico than he did in Monaco, where he had a good race. That is Bernd Schneider taking part in his first Grand Prix in the Zakspeed, ahead of Riccardo Patrese as Streff and Yannick Dalmas go through. Here coming towards us are Gintani's coming towards us. There goes Mansell, who, as you heard, is way down in 15th position, and his teammate Patrese are well ahead of him.
Yes, and I get the feeling that queue is to a certain extent being caused by Schneider, because Schneider in the Zakspeed, which is the lead car of that group, the red and white one, is of course, a turbocharged car. Now, the Zakspeed's not one of the greatest cars in the world, and look, you can see Patrese hounding him through the twists there, and then, of course, they get onto the straight, and at this altitude, turbos have such a huge advantage that he disappears out of range, and they can't get at him. So there's a prime example. And here comes Prost. So Prost is already slicing his way through the back markers, and that gives a pretty clear indication of just what a huge advantage. Nigel, being a proper gentleman, knows what it's like being in the lead of a Grand Prix and being held up by back markers, and it's amazing how experienced winners and leaders of Grand Prix are much better manners when being lapped than some of the guys who are habitually being lapped. You'd think with practice they'd get better at it, but of course they don't know just how awful it is to be lapping somebody and they just get in your way and hold you up. So that gives a clear indication of just the enormous advantage of a turbocharged engine, because this, to be lapping part of a healthy group this soon in the Grand Prix, is a bit of a worry.
Well, now let's see how Prost copes with these midfield men, and whether it gives Senna there in second place the opportunity to close up. Prost goes past Cathey in the Dallara, clips the curb in the process. Senna passes Mansell, who lets him through. And now Prost, ahead of the Dallara, is closing up on Oscar Larrauri, the Argentinian driver in the Eurobrunn. And incidentally, Modena did not qualify. Larrauri's teammate did not qualify for the Mexico Grand Prix. And as early as lap 10, Prost was lapping tail-enders. Now, watch him, as there's got Larrauri in front of him. That is Tarquini in the yellow car.
And before they got into the traffic, Berger had already caught 2 seconds on Senna. Senna, of course, has moved closer to Prost in the traffic, but he's still got a few cars. Prost has got a bit of a credit on cars passed. But Berger would appear to be catching Senna. Prost in charge at the front, pulling away slowly from Senna. But of course, there's this huge glut of traffic to get through, and all around the twisty section, it's very difficult. Prost.
Yeah, well, there's Prost. He's almost through that bunch of midfield men. The gap between himself and Senna has come down to 3 seconds from 5, so Senna was able to make better use of the traffic than his teammate. I nearly said his team leader. This is lap 14 that they're on now, 67 lap race, long way to go. Prost unusually is leading at this stage of the race, because very often his tactics are to sit back and watch and see how things develop. He's ahead of his teammate Senna. It is still Berger in 3rd place but gaining. It is still Piquet in 4th position. Alboreto in 5th place. Nakajima is still 6th. 7th is Eddie Cheever. 8th is Derek Warwick. 9th and leading the 3.5 litre class is Nannini. And 10th is Boutsen. Over the line goes Prost.
Harry, I think Prost might take you to task about him sitting back and waiting. His tactics, I think, to be fair to Prost, have never been guilty of sitting back and waiting. You don't win the World Championship that way. What he does do is, if he makes a bad start or is down the field a bit, he's very patient about awaiting his chance, and he doesn't try and win the race on the first lap, but he certainly always is going flat out. But he's a bit more thoughtful than the others, and of course he is the world's greatest tactician, probably the greatest ever. And we've got 2 cars off there, and looks like they've had a little tangle.
Yeah, I stand corrected, James. One of them is certainly Cathy in the Dallara as he struggles out of his car, and the little Italian's race is completed. What a pity, because that car is so much better than the one that they had in Brazil when they had to use one of last year's Formula 3000 cars, and he wants to get away from where he is pretty sharpish. And there's another retirement. That's Rene Arnoux in the JS31 has just spun off and gets going again, and the rear wing, as you can see, is completely missing. Now, those numbers at the bottom mean 11 Prost, 12 Senna, 28 is the Ferrari of Berger. Then there's Piquet, 27 is Alboreto, and 2 is Senna, as Prost completes his 15th lap.
Now, it'll be interesting to see who did better in the traffic out of Prost and Senna, because Senna has only 1 car left to deal with. That's Patrese, and he may well get him before the corner, but he didn't quite. So Patrese and of course Prost had to do the work first, hence the gap concertinaing down, or becoming smaller. And now, of course, as Prost emerges from the traffic with Senna still in it, it stretches out again. Remember, it was 5 seconds when they entered this gaggle of traffic.
And you're looking at Michele Alboreto in 5th place, who seemingly cannot catch Nelson Piquet in the way that his teammate Gerhard Berger did, and who is now in 3rd position. And the gap, 33 seconds between Nakajima in 6th place and Prost, the race leader. That is Alboreto in the V6 turbocharged Ferrari. Finished 2nd in the World Championship in 1985, and since then he's gone backwards, mostly because there's been a lot of trouble with the Ferrari one way and another.
That was a very good shot then of Gerhard Berger, and you can see why he's very much the #1 man at Ferrari at the moment, because old man Ferrari has always loved a racer, and he's really trying. Riding the curbs there, sliding the car beautifully, balancing it very well indeed. And Berger is really a man very much in form, very much on a high. And as the 2 McLarens crossed the line, it was 5.6 seconds that Prost was ahead of Senna, so the net result of all that traffic was pretty much a draw, in terms that they obviously both lost time, but it was much the same. So Senna goes through in 2nd place, so the back markers didn't really affect his battle with... Now let's just watch Senna, see if he's never been guilty of not trying. Let's see, we've had a good shot of Berger through these sweeps. And that's very tidy, impressive driving by Senna. Controlled the car on the limit, but beautifully balanced and controlled, and when it's really quick, it doesn't look hairy. It certainly didn't. Berger looked a little bit more aggressive, but nevertheless, he didn't look any less controlled in that he was holding his line.
Bernd Schneider out of his first Grand Prix. He qualified for Mexico, but he hasn't lasted very long. 15 laps his race ran, and the Zach speed, I presume the engine's gone. And you're watching Senna, some 5 seconds behind Prost, some 7 seconds ahead of Berger. But now, with Berger having cleared the midfield men, there he is in the background. This will give him an opportunity, with a clear track in front of him, to endeavour to close that gap between himself and Senna. And Berger's race plan is working. He said that he wanted to try and get up into third place and then set about the McLarens. Well, now he's got his opportunity. Race leader Alain Prost coming through to complete his 18th lap. Senna second, Berger third, Piquet fourth, Alboreto fifth. Nakajima is still sixth. Chiva and Warwick are still seventh and eighth. And Nannini and Boutsen are still ninth and 10th.
Il 17, Nannini il 19. Ti ricordo che Nannini con la sua nona posizione precede Boutsen ed è primo degli aspirati. Linea Germiani.
Eccoci, abbiamo Arnoux, stava discutendo animatamente con i tecnici prima di tutto. Si è un attimino calmato, vogliamo sapere, sembrerà banale la domanda, no? Di sapere cosa è successo, però volevamo proprio saperlo, che è una tesi sua. Poi sentiremo Alex Cappi anche.
Ma cosa succede? Non l'ho neanche capito io.
For Alain Prost, so Alain Prost very much answering anybody who was stupid enough to write him off as not as good as Senna at this stage, because not only is he setting fastest lap in the race, he's also pulling steadily away from Senna, and Berger really riding those curbs. That was probably a little bit too much, because when you ride it that high, it tends to throw the car, just kicks it a yard offline, and that ends up with a net result that you're actually slower through the corner. And that looks like Patrese being pushed into the pits, so Patrese continues the very unhappy weekend indeed for Williams. It's it has really stretched anybody's memory here to try and compare such a disastrous weekend. It goes back too far for memory that Frank had such a bad weekend. However, no worries, I'm sure he'll be right back. The suspension is very new, and this is a circuit quite different to anywhere else.
Riccardo Patrese out, but Senna very much in. And incidentally, that's Gugelmin out, Patrese out. Senna takes that very difficult pits turn. Now look for the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger in the background. There it is. The gap was 7 seconds. And the gap now is down to 5.6 seconds between Ayrton Senna there in the McLaren Honda in second position and Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari. So Berger is slowly, very slowly catching Ayrton Senna. Prost, meantime, is going faster and faster. 1 minute 20.73, a speed of 122.5. He's getting closer and closer to the lap record. Lap record 1 minute 18.3.
Yes, and if the track conditions stay good, they should go quicker and quicker, because the tyres are now settled in. The drivers can now, we've gone far enough for them to really attack. And of course, as usual, the fuel load is coming down. And remember, when they're full of fuel, these cars are more than half as heavy again. And that, of course, slows down the lap time, and as they drink the fuel and burn it, it gets lighter, and towards the end of the race they're at their quickest, so long as the track is still clean and grippy. But Prost is still slowly, gently extending his lead over teammate Ayrton Senna, and it's up to very nearly 8 seconds, 7.9 as they crossed the line last time.
7th and 8th, the two Arrows Megatrons of teammates Eddie Cheever on the right and Derek Warwick on the left. They're teammates who occasionally have harsh words with each other because they are very, very closely matched, as are their cars, of course. Derek Warwick qualified 9th, Cheever qualified 7th. Cheever, as you can see, is just ahead of his teammate, and the Megatron engine is responding to the 2.5 bar, but where's Berger? Prost has gone through, Senna's gone through. It's all right, we've spotted Berger. For one moment we thought he was in trouble, but I was saying that the Megatron engine is much more reliable with 2.5 bar boost than it was with 4 bar boost last year, and that is shown by the fact that Derek Warwick is 5th in the World Championship after the first 3 races. He's challenging his teammate Eddie Cheever. There's no team orders, of course, in the Arrows team, which has yet to win a Grand Prix. Riccardo Patrese got closest to it in 1978. But there they go, the 2 Arrows Megatrons in 7th and 8th positions, ahead of the 2 Benettons that we haven't seen in this race, but are still 9th and 10th, with Alessandro Nannini about as far ahead of his teammate Thierry Boutsen as Eddie Cheever is ahead of Derek Warwick. And on the 22nd lap now, just about 1/3 distance, it's Prost, Senna, Berger, Piquet, Alboreto, Nakajima holding on well in the points in 6th position.
The interesting thing about in the battle of the 2 McLarens is that in qualifying, Senna was about 0.3 of a second a lap quicker than Prost, and also in the warm-up this morning, and yet in race trim it seems to have reversed by a very similar amount. When they're running on their own, Prost seems to be pulling away from Senna at about 0.3 a lap.
You know, 2 weeks ago, people were in awe, literally, of Senna's driving at Monaco. It was described as millimetre perfect, inspiring in its perfection, incredible speed, and all those sorts of phrases. Perfectly true. But look what is happening between Senna and Prost now, with Prost really exercising his skill, and 8 seconds no less ahead of Ayrton Senna on the 23rd lap. The world champion leader, World Championship leader, Alain Prost, 2 races to his credit already, and 2nd place. He's leading the 3rd out of 4 races this year. Now let's go round Mexico with the 2 flying arrows of Eddie Cheever in the red helmet, and chasing him, number 17 in the blue and white helmet, Derek Warwick, that very tough, hard man from 4 Marks in Hampshire. Now they're going round the right-hander, down the long straight at about 175 miles an hour, coming out to lap Gabriele Tarquini in the Coloni. As you look at Nelson Piquet, and Piquet is being reeled in now by Michele Alboreto in the Ferrari in 5th place. Berger passed him long ago, and Alboreto, you just saw a flash of the Scarlet Ferrari in the background there, and it's soon, I think, going to be a situation where we've got the 2 Ferraris in 3rd and 4th places as Nelson Piquet threads his way through the complex of 10 bends which lead up to the very fast right-hander, which completes the lap. And into the pits comes Nigel Mansell, seemingly to fill the Williams Cup of misery to overflowing, because Riccardo Patrese has already retired, and it looks as though Nigel Mansell is going to do just that on lap 23.
Yeah, very much so. He's getting out of the car, so that's the end of the day, and I would suspect a similar problem for the 2 Williamses, and I suspect their suspension, quite honestly, too much of a coincidence for it to be anything else. That's been their bugbear this weekend. As we look at Nelson Piquet, and you see Alboreto in the background, and he's closing on Nelson, so we may just get a bit of a battle.
Cheever seguito a 16 di secondo da Warwick. Nono
As we do have an intriguing battle to watch between the 2 McLarens, because although the opposition the gap is not so big here in Mexico as it has been for the first 3 races of the season, I can't, it's too much of a coincidence to think that the opposition has improved, because Ferrari and Lotus were quite close, and they still are. I suspect that it's just not, some of the advantage for some reason has diminished here, but I'm quite sure it'll be back in other races. And on that basis, we're really quite fortunate in a car so dominant that we're going to be able to watch the two best drivers in the world today racing each other in the same car. It's a pity the rest of the opposition haven't got equally good cars, because then we'd have some really tremendous racing. But next year, hopefully we will.
And the gap between Piquet in third position, #1 in the yellow Lotus, and Alboreto behind him in the Ferrari is 3 seconds. Alboreto is slowly catching the Brazilian. And the way Nelson Piquet is going with a Honda engine shows you how good the McLaren chassis is, because Prost and Senna are a long, long way ahead of Nelson Piquet now. They've got exactly the same engine. There's no favoritism shown by the Honda technicians about which engine they have. Indeed, the engines are issued at random to the Lotus and McLaren teams. And the fact that Prost and Senna are so far ahead has to be, sadly, a criticism of the Lotus chassis, or maybe, a lot of people are saying, the fact that Nelson Piquet isn't trying as hard as he did last year. Some people would deny it.
Yes, well, certainly the gap between the #1 car, which this year is Nelson, last year was Senna, and Nakajima has miraculously shrunk this year. And certainly Piquet was no match for Nigel Mansell in the past, as we look to go back to Alain Prost, who's leading the race, but still working very, very hard. He's trying to build up that lead over Ayrton Senna. But as I was saying, certainly it was a general opinion, even whispered by some of the Lotus boys themselves, that they didn't think, and a new fastest lap for Berger, so Berger still charging and chasing Senna hard. But the Lotus team and quite a few other people, myself included, didn't think that Nakajima had improved by that much during the winter, considering he hadn't been driving a racing car at all. So certainly he would have improved a little bit, to be fair, because as he's gained experience and knows all the circuits now, but not a second and a half, and that's what the Lotus people quantified it as.
You saw the gap between Berger and Senna there on the screen. It is now less than 5 seconds, so although it is not coming down very much, nevertheless, lap by lap, with Gerhard Berger really charging now, and incidentally, the race leader, Alain Prost, is coming up to lap Thierry Boutsen, who is in 10th place and second in the 3.5 litre race, in quotes, as Cheever and Warwick in the reverse order, because now Derek Warwick has got ahead of his teammate Eddie Cheever and is therefore up into 7th position. Derek Warwick, that you are looking at, who has this season already had 2 4th places in Brazil and Monaco, is now pulling away from Cheever, which shows that the American was holding him up, and Derek Warwick is charging for the points. He's 1 place off 6th position at the present moment, round the right-hander where he went off last year, as a result of which the race was stopped on lap 30 to be restarted. Eddie Cheever fighting back, and the race order on lap 27 continues to be leader Alain Prost, second Ayrton Senna, in 3rd position is Gerhard Berger, 4th is Piquet, being caught by Michele Alboreto, 5th. 6th is Satoru Nakajima. Up to 7th has gone Derek Warwick. Down to 8th has gone Cheever. Still 9th and 10th Thierry Boutsen, as Alessandro Nannini, and in 10th position Thierry Boutsen. Eddie Cheever, that is. Ahead of the Ligier JS21. 31. Derek Warwick in the Arrows Megatron. The Ross Brawn designed car. Prost, race leader, lap 27. 67 lap race. Well, Prost is millimetre perfect, as he always is. The thinking man's Grand Prix driver, who drives just as much with his head as with his heart. Just look at the way he rockets through that complex of bends. Into the fast his right-hand 160-mile-an-hour corner to complete his 28th lap.
And is that Piquet? That's Nakajima. Nakajima pulling off the circuit with quite clearly a very severely blown engine, so that's the end of his day. And I'm just grabbing the microphone off Murray. Let's get that far out. Come on, come on, come on. And keep saturating it, because they have a nasty tendency to flare up again if you don't have plenty of foam on it. Anyway, no, I was just looking. Prost's left rear tyre seemed to be a little bit marked up coming through the quick corner. Looking at it now, but of course the other side, but it seemed to have cleaned off again. And of course you do get a big build-up of heat in the tyres on that very, very long, fast corner, because apart from anything else, it's a bit banked. But the gap, in fact, has come down a tiny bit to Prost, so Senna has pulled back a second. It was at its most a lap or two ago, up to 8.8 seconds. So let's watch, because if Prost hurt any of his tyres, that gap will disappear very quickly indeed.
And on lap 29, with the disappearance of Satoru Nakajima's Lotus Honda, Derek Warwick moves into the points again this season. Derek has had a couple of disastrous seasons in 1987 with Arrows and in 1986 with Brabham. It's coming good this year. The man who finished in second places when he was with the Renault team, and now with Arrows he is in 6th place in the Mexican Grand Prix as Alain Prost goes into the right-hander, and now the left at the end of the long start and finish straight, one of the fastest sections in any Grand Prix course in the world. Now Prost is through the right-hander at turn 3. Left and right again. Now shortly into the long straight which leads up to turn 4.
Well, Prost will be losing a bit of time here, but when he had a clear lap then, he re-established himself a little bit over Senna, but of course Senna's actually got a car in front of him, so they're in the same boat. But he got the gap back up over 8 seconds to Senna. In the meantime, however, Berger is still nibbling away at that gap. He is now down to 4.2 seconds, and not a lot in it, but he is definitely, although it's very slow, he is definitely inching towards Senna's McLaren.
Both Berger and Alboreto have despairingly said, if only we had another 50 horsepower, we could do something about the McLaren. We think we've got a good chassis. They say we think we've got a good chassis because they might not have if they had another 50 horsepower. But with the horsepower they've got at the moment, they're pretty satisfied with the handling. Alain Prost has certainly got nothing to complain about on lap 31 in this 67-lap race. He's still got a commanding cushion of over 7 seconds between himself and Senna. On his way at the moment, Prost, to his 3rd Grand Prix victory. There is Senna in the background. It looks visually about the same to me in terms of gap.
Ancora qualche problema di doppiaggio, come del resto diceva Larini in precedenza. Le prestazioni delle McLaren sono tanto superiori a quelle delle avversarie che i doppiaggi si ripetono con molta frequenza. Del resto già altre volte avevamo dovuto ricordare il fatto che con estrema facilità le McLaren riuscissero a doppiare tutti o quasi tutti gli avversari al termine della corsa, si intende. Alboreto, suo giro più veloce, il 30° in 1:21.209 e a 2 secondi e 45 da Piquet. Nannini ha preso un buon margine di vantaggio nei confronti di Boutsen, oltre 3.
To see that it's taken Alain Prost a long time to get up to Nannini. Now there is Senna, and the race order on lap 32 is Prost leading, Senna 2nd, Berger 3rd, in 4th position is Nelson Piquet, 5th is Alboreto, up to 6th has come Derek Warwick, and you see Berger now is continuing to be the fastest man on the course, 1 minute 20.489. First of all, it was Prost for lap after lap being fastest, and now Berger has got the bit between his teeth, and and for 3 laps in succession, he has put up fastest laps. 1:20.4 is the current one, and there is the gap between himself and Senna. He has, as James said, been nibbling away at that gap, and he's got it down to just under 3.5 seconds now. This tremendously determined Austrian, following in the footsteps of his great predecessor, Niki Lauda, 3 times world champion. And Berger's got 3 Grand Prix victories behind him, 2 with Ferrari and 1 with Benetton.
That was a good example of luck for Berger, because he had a clear run all through the twisty section, and his timing of catching the slower car was absolutely perfect, but you can't really work that out for yourself. It just happens by luck. And so he got past that one car at least with no loss of time. He's still got a gaggle ahead of him that he's going to have to deal with, and now he's caught them leading up to the twisty section. So there is Prost. Now he's emerged from that immediate clutch of practice. He's well ahead, and Prost is now 7 seconds, and you see Prost can do it when he has to. New fastest lap for Alain Prost. He's reopened the gap to Senna. He's now 7 seconds approximately ahead of Senna, and Senna's still had one back marker, one atmosphere car, one of the Benettons to pass.
But I think and hope that as you watch Alain Prost and look for Ayrton Senna, we're certainly going to see soon a real battle on this Mexico circuit, because Berger is now under 3 seconds behind Ayrton Senna on this, the 33rd lap. And if a high means anything, then Berger may well be on one, because remember, he won his first Grand Prix here in Mexico the year before last when he was driving for Benetton. And there goes the race leader, Alain Prost, now on his 33rd lap. Coming towards us is Senna, lapping Nannini in the Benetton, who is in 8th position. And Nannini is being rapidly caught, soon to be lapped by Gerhard Berger in 3rd place. And now Prost has responded. That is the first lap in under 1:20 that we have had. Alain Prost is getting the message. I've said many times in the past that these drivers, the leaders anyway, are all in touch with their pits by radio, and the McLaren team have a particularly good system where they get totally clear conversation between the driver and the pits when they want it all round the course. And Alain Prost has obviously decided it's time to speed up a bit. This is his half-distance lap, his being Alain Prost, the greatest driver of the current decade. He's got the record number of World Championship points. He's got the record number of Grand Prix wins, 30 of them. Round that daunting corner he goes to complete another lap. That's his 34th. And now maybe we'll be able to look back and see how far Senna is. There he is. Prost coming up to Chiva, number 18 in the white arrows. There he is. He is in 7th position. There's Berger, who's got ahead of Nannini. That shows you how much faster the turbos are than the 3.5-litre cars. Nannini with the new Ford V8 DFR engine. Up on the curve, Berger is really pushing to the ultimate.
Yes, and Berger's now got a clear road. He dropped back a bit on his gap, and Prost still really chipping it down. That's his 3rd lap under 1:20, and he's still over 1:19.9. So that just shows you how consistent Prost is. 3 laps covered by considerably less than 1/10 of a second in succession when he's got a clear run. Now Berger was a victim of traffic, and the gap to Senna has increased very slightly for him, and he's now 4.2 seconds behind Senna. And Senna, while Prost was setting those fastest laps, must have been lapping just fractionally slower, because he's holding Prost at about 7.5 seconds. So we, at long last, I think it's fair to say we've got a battle on our hands between the leading 3 places. Although they're not nose to tail or anything, there seems to be very little to choose between them. We've still got a long way to go, and it is, quite frankly, a wide open race, certainly in terms of the fact that if anything goes slightly wrong for one, they'll be out of it. Everybody's got to have a perfect car, and we still could have a very close finish.
Berger, third, can now clearly see Senna ahead of him in second position. Imagine the concentration that is needed. Berger nearly lost it there, right on the ragged edge. That's how hard he's charging. Imagine the concentration that is needed as they've got over an hour and a half to drive at this sort of intensity. Prost maintaining his lead. Senna is just holding his second place, but Berger getting closer and closer and closer all the time.
And the good news for us, sitting well outside the car, cocooned in our commentary position, is that we don't have the problem now of guessing as to what these turbo drivers are doing with their boosts, because for once there is no fuel problem here. Because of the altitude, the engines can't take in as much air, so you can't throw as much fuel at them. And Senna now puts up a fastest lap, so there's nothing to choose between certainly the two McLaren drivers, and Berger, working the traffic well, is absolutely in position to pick up the pieces and also is very much chasing the McLaren pair. There is Berger behind Senna, just come onto the pit straight in the background. And Senna a little bit quicker still. And it's tremendous stuff, because there is no doubt, you just look at these drivers, we've got very good pictures through these fast sweeping S's, and you can see very well into the cockpit just how hard they're working. You saw on the last lap Berger trying hard, just kicked a little wheel out of line, and that is Alboreto chasing Piquet in the Lotus. So Alboreto is also getting involved in the dice. He's worked long and hard to close that gap. He hasn't been far behind him, but he's just been inching away at it, maybe helped by the traffic bit. And there's Berger riding up those curves again, and that's where he kicked the back out last time. So, a very good race up front.
And just as there is a wonderful race in the making between Senna in second position and Berger in third, here is one for fourth position between Piquet and Alboreto, and the Ferraris are featuring. One of the top Ferrari people said to me despairingly at Monaco that it looked as though Honda had raised engine technology to an entirely new dimension, but that they were working hard to try to do something about it. Well, they're succeeding as far as Lotus Honda are concerned, because Berger is ahead of Piquet, and as you can see, Alboreto in fifth place is rapidly catching him. It is the combination of Senna, Prost, the McLaren chassis and Honda engine, which is proving to be unbeatable virtually thus far. And now Alboreto is getting closer and closer on lap 38 to being able to make a challenge for the fourth position, which is held by Nelson Piquet. And if he succeeds, as I think he will, although Piquet is not going to give way easily, we will then have Ferraris in third and fourth positions. Berger third and Alboreto fourth. But look, you see, look at the difference there. Piquet is 30 seconds, and so is Alboreto, behind Gerhard Berger in third position. But 11 seconds at this stage of the race between first and third is by no means irretrievable. There's still nearly half the race to go.
De Cesaris tallona Piquet, e Alboreto ha perso leggermente nei confronti del duo che lo precede. Prost al 38esimo passaggio gira in 1.19.818, che è un tempo di assoluto rilievo, anche se non raggiunge l'1.19.741, giro più veloce di Senna al 36esimo passaggio, e riporta il suo vantaggio nei confronti del brasiliano, suo compagno di squadra. Intanto Alboreto aveva passato De Cesaris a 7.638. In questo passaggio Alboreto è di nuovo a 1.57 rispetto a Piquet, ma come sapete ha avuto il problema che ha dovuto doppiare De Cesaris solo quando si è trovato il tratto rettilineo favorevole. Comunque continua l'inseguimento di Alboreto alla quarta posizione di Piquet, mentre per quel che riguarda Berger è a 5 secondi e 7 da Senna,
Of them, Alain Prost, double world champion, leading the championship this year, leading the Mexican Grand Prix. But Alboreto is very much within striking distance of Piquet now. Piquet in fourth position. And the race order on lap 40 in this 67-lap race, getting pretty close to two-thirds distance. There is the race leader, as he has been since the first corner. Alain Prost with Senna second, Berger third. There's the confirmation. Piquet fourth, Alboreto fifth, Warwick and Cheever, and then Nannini, the leading 3.5-litre car.
Well, the gap between the two McLarens, allowing for little fluctuations during traffic, has been very static for the last 7 or 8 laps. They're locked at around 7.5 seconds, although it'll probably be different this lap because Prost there lost time behind the Lola for a while. But they certainly seem locked in combat. Berger has dropped back a little bit, but he had a lot of traffic to pass that Senna had already got through. And they seem extremely evenly matched. So 7.5 and 7-ish seconds between 1 to 2 and also 2 to 3. And there's a long way to go, and it won't take a lot to change that. These leading 3 drivers look as if they're in a bit of a stalemate, but they are absolutely on the limit, all 3 of them. It's plain to see, and it will only take a very small straw to break any of those 3 camels back, to excuse the pun.
You may remember that earlier on in the race I said that it looked as though we were going to get the opportunity for the first time in 1988 to compare Prost, who is being held up at the moment by Philippe Streff in the AGS, and Ayrton Senna. I pointed out that in Brazil we hadn't been able to compare them because Senna had the gear selection trouble which held him up. In San Marino, Prost had a terrible start and never quite caught up to Prost, although the gap between them indicated that they were very level in terms of driving ability and speed. At Monaco, of course, Ayrton Senna, having built a commanding lead as a result of another bad getaway by Prost, retired. Well, they both got away well here in Mexico to be first and second at the end of the first lap. And Prost is showing, not that any confirmation was needed, that he has to be the man to beat. But Gerhard Berger is now really, look, there's the gap between Senna and Berger. It's increasing.
Yes, indeed. And we saw just a couple of corners ago, Berger go through what I thought at first was a flock of birds taking off. But then on closer inspection, because we can only see on the monitor there, that looked like waste paper blowing around. Now that can do racing cars a lot of no good, because if a bit of paper goes down into the radiator pod, it will flatten out against the radiator, and of course because the car is always going forward, it'll never come off again, and you can get overheating very easily by getting bits of paper stuck in the radiator, held there by the enormous air pressure, but of course screwing up the cooling. I'm looking in Berger's radiators now. They appear to be quite okay. But waste paper can be a menace, and quite an expensive one, because of course you don't stop when you're overheating. At least you don't stop voluntarily. You carry on just in case everything's going to be all right until the engine blows itself apart, which is expensive.
I have commented fairly critically in the past about the unreliability of Grand Prix cars. I'm certainly happy to eat my words here today with Alboreto now within sight of Nelson Piquet, because not only have the cars been incredibly reliable, but they've been incredibly consistent. I'm looking at the lap chart as I talk to you. There's been no change for the lead, no change for second place, no change for third place since lap 9 when Berger moved ahead, and there's been no change for fourth place, no change for fifth, and after Derek Warwick had moved up to sixth position on lap 28, no change there, all behind him. So incredibly consistent. We would just like to see them closing up a bit. This is lap 49. This is the main battle on the course at the moment between Nelson Piquet, lap 42, I apologise, can't read a lap chart properly, and Nelson Piquet in fourth position, and Prost now is maintaining his record of being the fastest man on the course. until Senna takes it and until Berger takes it. As James has pointed out, these three are incredibly evenly matched. And it is in particular a credit, I think, to Gerhard Berger, because there is no doubt that the combination of the McLaren chassis and the Honda engine is superior to the Ferrari combination.
Here, I entirely endorse that view, Murray. I think Berger is making the Ferrari go quicker than it's really capable of doing, if you see what I mean. He's driving an absolutely storming race and really charging, and he's holding on to two superior cars, quite honestly. Not very much superior, but it doesn't need to be in Grand Prix racing to be a big difference. And quite frankly, Berger is, well, we've seen a lot of good shots of him round the back, and I think you would all agree that he has been the most spectacular of anybody, and he's clearly giving it 110%. And that certainly is in his nature. He's a tremendous fellow, Berger. He has brought back the attitude, or hopefully will bring back the attitude in Grand Prix racing, that it's quite possible to be good at your job and visibly enjoy it. There have been too many years of long faces being a sort of fashion around the work area of a Grand Prix, and that is quite unnecessary. There's no reason to look miserable just because you're working hard. If you're enjoying your work, you can look happy. And Berger has shown us very well how to do that, because he's demonstrated it particularly well by the fact that he is quite obviously doing the job very well.
So is Michele Alboreto. He's now 2.6 seconds behind the yellow Lotus of Nelson Piquet in 4th position. There is the Ferrari of Alboreto, number 27. Derek Warwick is still in 6th position in the World Championship points for the 3rd time this year in 4 races. Eddie Cheever is still in 7th place. Alessandro Nannini is still in 8th position, and Thierry Boutsen is still in 9th place. And that's Piquet, the man who left Williams to join Honda with Lotus chassis, which he's sitting in right now. Not so long ago, I asked Alan Prost how he managed to maintain his motivation, having won 30 Grand Prix and more World Championship points than anybody else. And he said, with Ayrton Senna in the team, you don't really need any motivation. It's there. And there is Piquet. Now, the gap between Piquet and Alboreto, who crosses the line now, is still about the same, to 1/10 of a second. But Senna and Berger have got an extending gap. I don't know if Berger is in trouble and whether, therefore, we can expect to see Piquet and Alboreto catching, but the gap is up to 12 seconds between 2nd and 3rd men.
Yes, certainly. Well, I think we saw Berger really getting more out of the car than that of which it was really capable, and maybe, if anything, the least, I suppose, of his problems is that he's slightly overdone it for the tyres. We did know before the race that Ferrari were the most marginal of any of the chassis on this particular Goodyear tyre at this circuit, and it may just be that in that absolutely storming chase, he's just taken the edge off his tyres, because it can't be more than that. He's not exactly falling away, but he looks as if he can no longer sustain the chase to the McLarens. Meanwhile, the gap, really, Prost and Senna seem to be tied together on the same length piece of string. Occasionally it gets stretchy through the traffic, but still the gap is that around that 7-second mark. In fact, at the moment it's exactly 7 seconds between the two McLarens, what it was when they started this lap.
Warwick. Sì, scusate, Berger. Sì, Berger stava effettuando i doppiaggi di cui si parlava in precedenza e ha superato Cheever e sta avvicinandosi a Warwick quando siamo verso la conclusione del 46esimo giro. 21 giri quindi alla conclusione della corsa. Berger si avvicina a Warwick che allarga, gli dà abbastanza.
Moves over and lets the Ferrari through. Absolutely no point in trying to keep him back. because it's going to happen sooner or later, so you might as well let it happen sooner. And that's the Ferrari pit signal being held out to Gerhard Berger to show him that the gap is 15 seconds. He won't need any urging to go, and Eddie Cheever is now setting about his teammate Derek Warwick. There's Warwick in 6th place, Eddie Cheever in 7th.
Yes, and that was a little bit of a worry. I was a bit worried for Derek Warwick then, because his gentlemanly behaviour when letting Berger through, going into that quick corner, undoubtedly cost him a little bit of time, and Cheever was quick to see that, went through the corner on the proper line at full speed, and very nearly got into a position to attack Derek at the end of the straight. And that would have been a very unfortunate way to lose a place, particularly to his teammate. Remember, of course, that although Grand Prix cars teams run two-car teams, the teammate, your own teammate, is probably your most important rival in the business, because he's the only other guy in the field who's in an identical car. So it's very, very important that you beat him. You may like him, most teammates get on well together, you may, because you have to work together, you exchange information, but when it comes to the race, again, you don't want to push each other off, and neither normally wants to do that. But there is a very, very serious rivalry, and it is very important to each driver personally that he should beat his teammate.
I think everybody in the world who's interested in motor racing must, to some degree or other, be a Ferrari enthusiast. I certainly am, and I hope, therefore, that Gerhard Berger is not in the trouble that I fear he is, because not only is he dropping back from Ayrton Senna in 2nd place, but Nelson Piquet in 4th position. Look for the yellow Lotus in the background. Well, we just changed shot and you miss it, but visually Nelson Piquet is starting to close a bit on Gerhard Berger. Piquet, who is 4th, Berger, who is 3rd. Race leader still on lap 48 in this 67-lap race is, as it has been for the whole distance, the brilliant Alain Prost, still about 5 or 6 seconds ahead of his teammate Ayrton Senna. We're on the way to seeing yet another McLaren steamroller 1st and 2nd position result in Mexico, as we had one in San Marino, as we might well have had one in Monaco had Senna not made that famous mistake, and as we certainly would have had in Brazil had not Senna's gear linkage gone. So McLaren are dominating as they have done all through the season. There is Prost, number 11, and he's coming up to take Stefan Johansson's Ligier. 1 minute 19.2, so Prost is certainly not giving up. He's maintaining the fastest lap tradition, lap 49 that was, and it's amazingly consistent, because on lap 34 he went round in just over 1 minute 19, and on lap 35 and on lap 36. On lap 37 he went round in 1:19.3, and on lap 49 he's gone round in 1 minute 19.29. A winning average. We are now on lap 49, and there has been no change in the top 10 places since lap 28. There's reliability and consistency for you.
Now that's worked well for Prost, because he was able to pass the Benetton on the straight rather than have just fail to catch him and then have to wait through this long series of bends. And that might work, just help a little bit with Senna, because that was luck rather than judgment. You can't plan when you catch slower cars at all, unless you're in very close company with the guy behind you and you want to use the slower car in front for slipstreaming purposes. Then of course you might be tactical, but otherwise you just drive fast. And the two arrows, Derek Warwick holding the inside line, Eddie Cheever, real wheel-banging match, and that was, I think, a very clear demonstration of the sort of rivalry you can get between teammates. And usually after a thing like that, there are words spoken between the two drivers, because I would think that Cheever, on the one hand, will be upset with Warwick for taking the inside line and, as it were, defending his position against his own teammate when he's ready to pass. And Warwick, I would think, would also, with some justification, be annoyed with Cheever leaning on him and wheel banging, or getting very close to wheel banging, because at that sort of speed, that's not really a very sensible game to play, or not unless you want it to end in tears. But certainly makes for good viewing, and the director is very sensibly staying on this in-house rivalry that's going on, and this is, funnily enough, the sort of thing we've been hoping for this season from Prost and Senna, because it'd be even more fun if we see that for the lead. As yet it hasn't happened, but it is actually happening between Prost and Senna at this very moment, except that there's about 6.5 seconds between them. They're going at very much the same speed. Prost first one under 1:19, so those lap times are steadily coming down. That's as, of course, the fuel load reduces. The cars get more maneuverable and nimble, and more they're able to accelerate a bit better when they're that much lighter. And this battle is absolutely raging. Warwick took quite a long time. I think it was about 20 laps ago that he got past Eddie Cheever, but Eddie Cheever has not taken it lying down at all. On the contrary, he's been fighting his way back ever since, and he was unable to get away when in front, and now we've reversed the positions. Warwick can't get away.
Look at that, and you see very quickly that the leading 3.5 litre car is still that of Nannini in 8th position, 1 lap adrift ahead of his 9th place teammate Thierry Boutsen. And my heart goes out to the Milton Keynes Arrows Megatron team of Jackie Oliver and Alan Rees, who have fought so hard over the years financially to keep their heads above water in order to produce a good Grand Prix car. But at last they've got some proper backing, as a result of which they've not only taken on Ross Brawn, a very accomplished technician, but other support people. They're extending their factory at Milton Keynes. They're ploughing the money into the cars. Heine Marder, the very gifted Swiss tuning expert, is looking after the Megatron engines, as he seems to look after about half the other engines in the grid, incidentally. And it is showing, because Eddie Cheever, in 7th position behind Derek Warwick, who is the leader of these two cars in 6th place, is therefore only 1 position off the points, where in lap 52, and notwithstanding the incredible reliability that we have already had, with no change in the top 10 positions since lap 28, and this is lap 52, I would be mildly surprised if somebody doesn't drop out ahead of Derek Warwick, in which case Eddie Cheever would move up into 6th position to give himself a World Championship point, and both the Arrows would therefore be in the points, unless the car that dropped out, of course, was Derek Warwick. So, lap 52, race leader, there he is, Alain Prost, comfortably ahead and going faster and faster, lap by lap, than Ayrton Senna in 2nd position, his teammate. So every time Senna tries to go quicker, Prost demonstrates that he's got yet more in reserve to show the newcomer to the McLaren Honda team that Prost is number 1 in fact as well as in theory. Senna 2nd, Berger now some 16 seconds behind Senna is in 3rd position. Piquet is still 4th, Alboreto is still 5th, Warwick is 6th, just ahead of his teammate Cheever 7th, 8th and 9th, still the 2 Benettons, 1st and 2nd in the 3.5 litre class of Nannini and Boutsen.
Nella velocità, Prost. Però c'è una cosa, che hanno scoperchiato le gomme e vediamo scritto Senna. Probabilmente Senna, pur dando maggior pressione, ha problemi di gomme, tanto è vero che la McLaren sono pronti per il cambio. Quindi tutto sommato è un duello che viene pilotato chiaramente dai box attraverso la regia di Ron Dennis, e hanno tutta l'intenzione di far avvicinare il più possibile a Prost Senna, consentendogli appunto, semmai se può, di aumentare questa pressione.
Intanto Senna ha girato in 1:18.766, che vuol dire a un solo decimo dal record stabilito il giro precedente da Prost in 1:18.608, quindi evidentemente Senna dovrebbe aver tratto qualche beneficio da questo boost 4. Intanto Berger è terzo a 26 secondi e vedete di che con in mezzo Dalmas e l'inquadrato Alboreto all'inseguimento, che stanno per concludere a loro volta il 53esimo giro dei 67 previsti. Transita Piquet sul traguardo, ha un distacco da Berger di 35 secondi. Alboreto passa in questo momento ed è staccato da Piquet di 2 secondi e 523. Palazzoli.
Ho visto in fondo all'uscita della curva veloce che arrivava Prost come un...
So you are saying to yourselves, Alboreto is catching Piquet. I have to tell you that at the last corner it was an optical illusion. I took the gap. It was 2.9 seconds. It really does look as though Alboreto is catching Piquet, but on the stopwatch he's not. Although he, like Berger, is charging, Berger has had to back off a bit. I suspect because his left front tyre has gone, it was suspect before the race began that the Ferraris would be able to go the whole race distance without changing the left front. But Alboreto seems to be throwing caution to the winds on this, the 55th out of 67 laps, in an effort to take the place from Piquet, and it's certainly less than that now. He's taken half a second off since I took the times.
Yes, and the weather forecasters have cracked it as again. They're in Mexico, as in most other parts of the world. They said it will rain before the end of the race. That was only 20 minutes before the start of the race, and as you can see, the sun is now out. There are a few clouds around, but it really doesn't look as if it's going to rain before the end of the race.
1.8 seconds, and you saw Piquet sliding. I think his tyres are going off, and definitely Michele Alboreto, number 27 in the background in the Scarlet Ferrari, in 5th place, is gaining on the reigning world champion. There he is, Nelson Piquet. Piquet is in trouble in terms of grip. Michele Alboreto is catching him in the Ferrari. Still no change at the front. Still Prost, Senna, Berger. This is the battle for 4th position. They're coming out of turn 12 on the way to the left-handed turn 13, which they're at now. Now the dash down after this corner to that fast and daunting right-hander, which seems to go on and on and on at some 155 miles an hour before they burst out onto the finishing straight. They're entering it now. Piquet goes through to complete his 56th lap. Alboreto goes through. Now we'll see what the gap is as they go across the line. Well, that's the answer for us, because Alboreto saw his board, and the gap is 1.8 seconds. Piquet has nipped ahead.
Yes, that might just give Piquet a bit of a breather. I couldn't see who the back marker was there, but if Alboreto doesn't catch him before the next corner, and it was Sala, and Alboreto should with the turbo power, but if he's stuck behind him for the whole twisty bit, yes, he's going to be. I think Alboreto did not make it past Sala, and that should give Piquet a fair bit of space and a lot of relief. He should emerge from this probably getting on for 3 seconds ahead. Getting down towards the last 10 laps of the race, and he's going to have to work very hard to hold on to that 4th place. And sure enough, he got quite a nice breather, courtesy of Luis Sala, who, through no real fault of his own, managed to arrive at the long series of S's just ahead of Alboreto. So Alboreto has got to start working his way back up to Piquet's gearbox again. And then, of course, he's faced with the problem of passing him, and we've already seen how difficult it was for Berger to pass Piquet, because basically the Lotus appears to be quicker on the straight than certainly Berger's Ferrari. Now, it could be that they're set up slightly differently. Alboreto could be running a bit less wing. And look at that, there's Prost in the background, coming up to lap 5th place man, and for sure he will do that before the end of the race, because he can't afford to let up, because Senna is not far behind. And so the leading pair will be, well, it'll be a big tribute to Berger that he's the only person able to stay on the same lap of McLaren's. And remember that Berger even might not be able to do that, because although he was competitive for over something like 2/3 of the race, finally it's taken its toll and he's dropping right back.
Well, this is the interest here at Mexico, the battle between Nelson Piquet and Michele Alboreto in respectively Lotus, Honda and Ferrari as Piquet crosses the line. And Alboreto's consistently getting that signal, and as they go across the point there, Piquet, it's 2.3 seconds now, the gap between Piquet and Alboreto, with Prost catching the Ferrari.
Yes, I have to say that although the McLaren drivers are encouraged, certainly allowed, and encouraged most of the time to race each other by Ron Dennis, and as a matter of McLaren company policy, and quite right too, there comes a point in the race when Ron Dennis, the boss of the team, has the right to tell them to stop racing each other, and I think at this point that would be a sensible thing to do. It's quite clear that today Prost has won today's battle as far as all bar the shouting and things going wrong, and the way to make things to go wrong, and the same that Senna has a clear second place, and the only thing that, or one of the things that could make things go wrong now is if they continue to race each other. The challenge is gone. Prost has certainly won the battle as far as driving is concerned. He's kept that 8-second gap. It's over 8 seconds there on the caption, and I would suggest, certainly if I was in Ron Dennis's position, I would now ask my drivers to ease right up and get the cars nicely to a finish. But if he doesn't, we're the luckier ones, because Prost appears to still be going very quickly indeed.
Yes, that was, and Piquet's in trouble. There's a great haze of smoke coming from the back of the Lotus, and Alboreto is now taking 4th position and has taken it from Nelson Piquet as the Brazilian's Honda engine blows on lap 60, and out of the race goes the world champion. So now we have got Ferrari in 3rd and 4th places. Off comes the steering wheel so that Nelson Piquet can get out of the car, and up to Michele Alboreto, who is in 4th position, comes the dominant McLaren of Alain Prost to lap the man who is 4th.
Rompe il motore. Vi ricordate che anche
Monaco, in the closing stages of the race, gave the suggestion, oblique instruction, to Ayrton Senna that James was just talking about, to cool it, because Alain Prost had settled for 2nd position and the 6 points that went with it. And as a result of doing exactly that, Ayrton Senna, who had been trading fastest laps with Alain Prost, who now passes Michele Alboreto and laps the 3rd place man. Only 3 people are now on the same lap. Ayrton Senna at Monaco relaxed his concentration and lost the race when he went off at Portier. Now, if Ron Dennis has issued the same sort of suggestion, oblique instruction, to Prost and Senna, I cannot see Alain Prost relaxing his concentration. He is too wily and experienced a campaigner for that now. He is on his 60th lap.
And also, I bet you, if they haven't, I mean, quite clearly they're both racing at the moment, but if they do get told to slow down, I bet you Prost waits and lets Senna slow down first, because he wouldn't be stupid enough to make the mistake of slowing down and then seeing Senna disobey orders. At least I hope he wouldn't. But maybe Ron is frightened to give the instruction after what happened at Monaco. But funny enough, it's a sort of mistake you make once in your life, but not twice, the one that Senna made in Monaco. And that is, of course, when you do slow down in a racing car, you've been driving on an absolute knife edge of control and balance. Your concentration at that point is natural. You don't have to make yourself concentrate when you're driving flat out, as you can see Prost is really going for it now. It's automatic. It's a byproduct of doing the job. But when, of course, you slow down, the pressure comes off, it's very easy to make an immediate mistake. We've seen it a lot of times. People who watch regularly will remember Mansell doing that at Spa, 3 or 4 years ago, when he first got in the proper points and came 2nd. Was when his teammate Rosberg disappeared from his mirrors at the end of the straight, and he was still looking in his mirrors at the end of the straight. That's a classic case of the pressure working, coming off, and then you making a mistake. We saw Nannini do that at Imola earlier this year. So it's easy to do. but most of these drivers have already done it once in their lives and aren't likely to do it again. So, if anything, Prost is opening the gap a little bit. I was just visually there. He seemed to be a little bit further ahead of Senna, and maybe Senna has eased up of his own accord without necessarily taking instructions.
Alain Prost, that you are looking at, is not only the fastest man on the course, has not only made the fastest lap in the Mexican Grand Prix of 1988, but in the process has handsomely broken the previous lap record, which was put up by Nelson Piquet last year in a Williams Honda with 4-bar boost, and the McLaren Honda this year has 2.5-bar boost. Prost's fastest lap 1:18.6 compared with Piquet's previous lap record of 1 minute 19.1, and it seems that no matter what the legislators do to slow up Grand Prix cars, the technicians beat them, because faster and faster they go. First of all, they banned ground effects, and still the cars went faster. Then they reduced the fuel allowance for the turbo cars, and still they went faster. This year, they have reduced the turbo boost allowance and the fuel allowance, and the turbos are going faster again. Senna was faster in pole position for the Mexican Grand Prix than Nigel Mansell was last year with 4-bar boost. Prost has broken the lap record with 2.5-bar boost. So, Grand Prix cars are going just as fast, in fact marginally faster than they have done. And now Ayrton Senna, there is Ayrton Senna in second position, has got the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger right behind him. Look at this. Prost leading, Senna second, no doubt about this. This is lap 63. Now let's get a decent shot of this and see what's happening. There is the flying Ferrari in the background. This is, well, there's the 49 seconds, James.
It's Alboreto. He's just lapped Alboreto because he's just got past him. No problem at all. We thought we got a race on suddenly. No, it's Alboreto, who you remember Prost lapped just a couple of laps ahead of it. And unfortunately, no such luck. We've got no grandstand finish. Berger some 35 seconds or so or more behind Senna, and Senna will have to get into an awful lot of trouble with his engine down, and I think for Gerhard to catch him down. Because clearly Berger got into a bit of trouble. We suspect tires. I think that's the most obvious, and he had to relinquish his valiant chase, because it certainly was a tremendous drive by Berger and tremendously entertaining to us. We've had wonderful pictures from this race, so we've got to congratulate the production, which I think is being handled by FOCA this time, in conjunction, of course, with the facilities provided by Mexican TV. And we've had some really good close-up shots through these S's, and I'm very glad, because they're some of the best shots I've ever seen, and it really does give a better impression for those of you at home on just what it's like and what hard work it is to drive these cars. We could see into the cockpit, we could see the cars sliding about, and you don't often see that. It's, in fairness, those long sweeps are a director's dream. He can get his camera set up just right so that you do get a very good view, and that isn't always possible at most circuits, but it's been tremendous stuff. And you can see Prost still working his car very, very hard. Senna is still ready to pounce in the background. There is Senna just coming into shot as Prost goes out of it, and this is as big as the gap has ever been in it at any time during the race. So although we didn't get a close race in terms of wheel-to-wheel dicing, we had a very hard, a very close race in terms of the fact they were very evenly matched, and Prost made his advantage at the start.
Well, having woken up from my long sleep, which made me think that Berger had caught Senna, for which my apologies, I confirm that Alain Prost has once again demonstrated that he is very much the man to beat. This is lap 65 in this 67-lap race, reduced by 1 lap owing to the aborted start when they actually did started and Nannini had trouble with his engine, as a result of which they reduced the race length by 1 lap. And you see now Alain Prost on his 66th lap out of 67. He has only got 2, including the lap he's on now, of these 2.75-mile Mexican Grand Prix laps to go. Between himself and yet another checkered flag, yet another victory to make his 31st, to raise his points total from his existing level of 430.5 to 439.5. It seems that nothing can stop this incredible little Frenchman. He laughingly said after he had passed Jackie Stewart's record of 27 Grand Prix, I would like to go on until I win 40, but that only happened last year, and now he's on his 31st Grand Prix victory, and if he goes on the way he is going, he's going to win more than 40 before he retires. To retire to concentrate on his promotion business. He's just finished promoting the Formula 3000 Pau Grand Prix, and Alain Prost now goes into his last victory lap, having led the Mexican Grand Prix from the moment the lights turned to green and he entered the first corner. He has in the process demonstrated to his teammate Ayrton Senna, of whom many people were saying that he was the man and that Prost was over the hill. Let me hasten to say that I am not one of those people. And Prost is proving that he's very much number one. It's been an absolutely indomitable drive.
Yes, very much so. And yes, I'm afraid, to be absolutely fair, Murray, it was only the mugs who were saying that Prost was beaten before he started. Senna, of course, will run him for his money all the way, and I'm not saying that Senna won't win the championship, because they're very evenly matched, and that's what today's race proved more than anything, because once Prost got the better start, remember, Senna was behind Piquet from right till the end of the first lap, and that little tiny thing, the gap was a couple of seconds when they settled down in 1 and 2, and Prost always had the upper hand, very much like at Imola, where the roles were reversed 2 races ago, when Prost got the bad start and never ever got back on terms with Senna. So Prost takes the checkered flag.
To win the Mexican Grand Prix of 1988 in magnificent style. He'll slow down and stop almost immediately because he's been caught before on the car being underweight as a result of fuel. And there goes Ayrton Senna in the background in 2nd position to finish in only his 2nd Grand Prix of 1988. He won the first one that he finished in at San Marino. But for the 3rd time in 4 races, Ayrton Senna has been beaten by Alain Prost. Victory then for Alain Prost of the Mexican Grand Prix. 2nd, his teammate Ayrton Senna. In 3rd position, Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari. Both the Ferraris have finished because Alboreto is 4th. Derek Warwick and Eddie Cheever both finish in the points for Arrows, 5th and 6th. Nannini wins the 3.5-litre race in 7th position with Boutsen 8th, Dalmas 9th, and Stefan Johansson a meritorious 10th position after a long, hard drive in the Ligier. Alain Prost has increased his championship lead. He's got 33 points. Berger is still 2nd on 18, but Senna is only 3 points behind the Ferrari driver in 3rd place, and Alboreto is 4th. Needless to say, McLaren have increased even further their massive Constructors' Championship lead. 48 points, Ferrari on 27 in 2nd place, and Arrows and Lotus tying with 9 points behind them.
Comunque le due Arrow conquistano punti mondiali entrambe. Mentre li stiamo aspettando, sentiamo intanto Palazzoli cosa vuol dire.
Ce lo fa notare una curiosità: le McLaren non hanno assolutamente problemi di benzina, e qui vabbè era anche scontato, perché la curiosità è questa: di solito si fermano subito dopo il traguardo per motivi, e qui lo spieghiamo una volta per tutte, di peso. Ora invece hanno molta benzina nel serbatoio, le macchine vengono pesate con la benzina, si sono permesse di fare un giro d'onore.
Livia Sermiani.
Sì, avevamo la possibilità di sentire Nelson Piquet su quelle che erano state le cause del suo ritiro. Siamo in diretta, Nelson.
È un motore, è andato via, magari una turbina, qualcosa così.
Ecco, abbiamo visto che eri tallonato
No, manteneva lui senza problema, era lì, il mio pace era quello lì, non andava più davanti ma non andava più indietro.
Veramente marziane queste macchine McLaren,
Vanno molto bene.
A linea a Poltronini.
Allora, concludiamo questo Gran Premio del Messico, quarta prova del Mondiale. Vince Prost davanti a Senna, Berger, Alboreto, Warwick, Cheever, Nannini, Putzen, Dalmas, Johansson, Sala, Streif, Larrauri, Tarquini, Ghintani e Capelli. Giro più veloce per Prost, 52esimo in 1:18.608. La Ferrari ancora una volta riesce ad andare sul podio con Berger che aveva insidiato anche per un certo tempo Senna. Un commento conclusivo da parte di Larini.
Direi che Senna qua ha fatto una gara magistrale e ha dimostrato che non è seconda a nessuno, in particolar modo Senna.
Prost, sì. Quindi un campionato che si presenta ancora interessantissimo. La Ferrari comunque mantiene la sua posizione di sfidante delle due McLaren. Il prossimo impegno, Gran Premio del Canada il 12 giugno, seguito la settimana dopo, non 15 giorni di intervallo, il 19 dal Gran Premio degli Stati Uniti a Detroit. Poi comincerà la serie europea in luglio con il Gran Premio di Francia, seguito da Inghilterra e Germania e così via. Restituisco la linea a Roma e grazie per averci seguito da parte di Mario Poltronieri, Ezio Germiani, Gianfranco Palazzoli e Nicola Larini.
Ersten 3. Zweiter in Rio, 5. in Imola, 2. in Monte Carlo, 3. in Mexiko. Bravo, Gerhard Berger, ein starker Grand Prix, was für ihn möglich war, das hat er gemacht und ein bisschen mehr sogar hat er noch probiert. Gerhard Berger zum zweiten Mal ist oben auf dem Siegerpodest im Autódromo Rodriguez in Magdalena Mixtuca am Rande der 20 Millionen Menschenstadt Mexico City. Man kann von den Gesichtern sehr deutlich ablesen, was jeder Fahrer im Augenblick denkt. Für Berger ist es eine frustrierte, das ist dann überhaupt keine Frage. Der PS-Überschuss der Honda-Fahrzeuge ist für ihn zu viel. Prost, guter Start, das Tempo diktiert. Senna, ob er ein Problem gehabt hat, weiß ich nicht, ob er von der Stallorder gebremst wurde. Vielleicht gab es eine Stallorder, dass der Abstand ab einer gewissen Anzahl von Runden nicht weniger als so und so viele Sekunden betragen darf. Da kommt Ron Dennis, der heuer alle Grand Prix Rennen gewinnen möchte. Ein Vierter hat er schon geschafft, 4. Rennen von 16, 4. Sieg. Für das McLaren-Team müsste es eigentlich genau die jetzt kommen, die Hymne des französischen Siegers. Alle Prost. Und hier haben Sie noch einmal das Ergebnis nach 67 Runden, 3 Fahrer nur in der gleichen Runde. Berger der Einzige, der das Tempo der McLaren Hondas mithalten konnte und in der gleichen Runde wie Prost und Senna diesen Grand Prix beendet hat. Weltmeisterschaft Prost 33 von 36 möglichen Punkten nach 4 Rennen. Gerhard Berger 18, hat 50% aller theoretisch möglichen Punkte also geschafft. Prost hat ein riesengroßes Haus am Genfer See, dort wäre Platz genug für die vielen Pokale, aber wie Ron Dennis kennt, seinen Teamchef, wird er den Siegerpokal sofort kassieren, um ihn in die McLaren-Fabrik zu bringen. Im Parallelbewerb der Konstrukteure McLaren, Ferrari, Lotus, Eros, Benetton, Tyrrell, obwohl beide Fahrer, nämlich Paul Montelli, diesmal nicht qualifiziert waren, und an 7. Stelle Williams dank dem einen Punkt für den 6. Platz von Patrese in Monte Carlo. McLaren hat eine neue Fabrik. McLaren ist ständig im Windkanal mit einem 1:3 Modell, mit dem alles probiert wird. Hier hat Prost fast Trost für seinen Stallkollegen Senna. Und diese Szenen, glaube ich, kennen Sie. Baleste, der Präsident der FIDE, ist diesmal nicht in Mexiko. Bei früheren Gelegenheiten haben die Fahrer ja keine Chance ausgelassen, um ihren Präsidenten mit Champagner zu benetzen. Aber Baleste hat gestern im Autodrom angerufen und hat zu Prost gesagt, ich möchte ihn unbedingt ans Telefon kriegen. Darauf hat man Prost ans Telefon geholt und er mit seinem Präsidenten telefoniert. Liebe Zuschauer, das war der Grand Prix von Mexiko. Danke fürs Aufbleiben, danke fürs Zuschauen. Nächster Grand Prix in 2 Wochen im Grand Prix von Kanada in Montreal, 2 Stunden früher für Sie. Da wird der Nachtkrimi, das hoffentlich wird nicht so spät aus sein. Nochmals danke fürs Zuschauen, auf Wiedersehen und gute Nacht.
Second Senna, third Berger, fourth Alboreto, fifth Warwick and sixth Eddie Cheever. Professor Prost wins again, but Senna may just have been getting to him at this stage of the season.
I can't push hard like him all the time. Every day, every practice, every race, starts, try to make the pole position, everything. I can't do it anymore. I recognize, it's get too old maybe. It was difficult to race, even if it looks easy from outside, because Ayrton was pushing hard all the time, and the car was absolutely perfect, no problem, but the tires, I was a little bit afraid with the tires. I did not know if I had to stop or not, because at the first part of the race, tires were not very good, and then it came back better.
Well, Alan simply went faster right from the start. I had a good start, but then I had a problem with the Papa valve that carried on open for the whole lap, and by the time I got consistent, he had already few seconds, which were very important. From that on, I think he drove very fast and was difficult to keep up with him, especially because he was very hard on the tires, and from one time to the other, suddenly you had some grainy or some blisters. But I think Alan drove very well, and